I must say it's quite exciting when Cyril tells us we're going from 2 to 4, or half an hour before you get on a plane to come down here. So I do confess, thank you very much to all the amazing generator suppliers for putting up with 7 people phoning them all at the same time to say we need a generator or we're going to have a cadenza. I'm an ex-Wits lecturer, so I can even survive everyone's phone and him answering his phone, which is totally unacceptable. But we would prefer if you actually put your phones on silent. But we will survive it on this early day of the morning. From our perspective, lots and lots happening in the Eastern Cape. We are very excited. My job for 20 minutes is to paint the scene. Where are invasives at the moment? And we're not training invasives, we're not saying what are invasives. Very much the background is how did we get to where we were? And where is the team? Where did the team come from? If we look back to 1998, Mornay and myself have been with the Horticultural Partnership. Legendary people like Christo Marie and Guy Preston started this out in 1995. They basically said we need a poverty relief program that takes out invasives. It is South Africa's Roosevelt plan. In the 1930s in America, Roosevelt said, how do we get all the poor people to work? And he said, we're going to build roads, we're going to build bridges, we're going to get people to work that way. In South Africa, it's been environmental. And at certain levels, we've had between 20 and 25,000 people working, for which we must be very grateful that the environment was where our poverty relief program is. And certainly Working for Water, National Environmental Programs, as it's now known, is the only RDP program that exists from 1994. Now, right from the beginning, they realized that you could only get laws passed and people would actually follow the law if you had partnerships. And these were the partnerships. The Forestry Partnership had its moments. Forestry Department wasn't too fancy, didn't like the idea of pines and eucalypts being given invasive status, but they've come a long way in terms of the partnership. This particular partnership was very successful, and most of us come from this particular partnership where we were approached. And of course the pet trade partnership is still very toxic, and they're completely suspicious of the government and everything they do. A lot of money has been poured into this, millions and millions and millions. And when people say to me, but they haven't taken the lantana off my pavement, I say, well, you know, they're working in strategic areas where there are rivers, where the money needs to be. So I don't accept the story that the government hasn't tried. There's an awful lot of money that goes into this. It is still, I think it's a 2 billion rand program now, I stand corrected, but obviously there are lots and lots of the Working for Fires, the Working for Waters, wetlands, land, forests. I have been part of the forests, working for forests for nearly a decade now. I leave next week to go to the World Forestry Congress, where South Africa still assists on the communication platform there. Working on waste, people, and so we go. Where I come from, this is where I come from, the jacarandas. I got a call from Guy Preston to say, my gosh, the scientists say all the jacarandas in Joburg and Pretoria need to be cut down because they're invasive. You know, we live in Cape Town, so we don't care about jacarandas, but the people in Joburg and Pretoria seem to be a bit hysterical about it. You know, can you come and help us on communications so we can tell them why we're going to cut down their 70,000 jacarandas? Obviously it didn't happen. Pretoria went berserk. Pretoria said, you're not going to cut down our 70 jacarandas. And that was the beginning of conflict management and invasive species. And we have weathered a great many crises as we've got. Shoot forward now, all the way from sort of that sort of past era to now, what is the drama at the moment? The drama at the moment is that sometimes we're waiting for the law to catch up. So we have the dragon fruit. Now the white dragon fruit is a category 2 species, but if you're actually looking at a nursery or you're looking at a sign along the side of the road, dragon fruit basically looks like a sort of a cactus looking thing that's about 30 centimeters high, comes out of a pot. How do you tell whether it's this white one, which is on the list, or this pink one, which is just as invasive, but actually has its own species name and is not on the list? So from our perspective, we need the law to catch up. There are actual fact, a lot of these dragon fruits are very invasive. How do you where are the ethics on promoting invasives, where you should or you shouldn't promote them? Certainly, a very good friend of mine, Tanya Fisser, runs the Gardener magazine, and she actually phoned me and she said, listen, we're putting the dragon fruit on the cover of our magazine in December, but you were waffling on about something about dragon fruit the other day. Can I send you the 2 pages that we're going to put on the front cover, and the 2 pages we're putting, and just tell us if we should do it. And we have colleagues. One of our great colleagues is Philip Ivey, who was at Sandby and is now with the Centre for Biological Control, Rhodes University. And he just said, we've got to train the media. The media cannot put these things up and promote dragon fruit, particularly even if they're doing it legally. We must talk to them about the fact that we don't want this kind of stuff in our country. Go Platteland had no such operations. We obviously don't have, our contacts are not as good, and they are promoting all these invasives in the Karoo. So we have successes and we have failures, and from our perspective we can only explain to people what's going on and how they think they should do it. This is the latest front lines of conflict, and this is the Empress Tree. Now the Empress Tree is a Category 1 Chinese tree that grows like you can't believe it. Within 5 years it's this giant tree. It is a major invasive. It grows absolutely huge. It's a huge invader in the United States. It's known as a global invader. But of course the forestry industry think it's absolutely fabulous. In this country, it is Category 1A, and you're going to learn what these categories are as we go along, and for those of you who are aware of it, Category A is early detection, early removal. We don't want this in our country, it must go. But we have problems that people are saying, in this new world of sustainable forestry, we need wood products. We need wood products. In actual fact, next week at the World Forestry Congress, they are launching #replace with wood. And there's a huge initiative to say, don't use plastic anymore, let's use sustainable forestry. So there's a huge case for this, that it is a good idea. So but it's pitted people against people. There are people, particularly in the permits department, and you have colleagues here who you can ask questions of today. They say, this is Category 1A, we don't want it. But then we have Ecoflora, who are actually planting plantations of this Empress Tree in KwaZulu-Natal. They got it in legally via the Department of Agriculture in 2006, 7, 8, that era. They brought it in, they put the plantations up. In 2015, that became a Category 1A. Category 1A says it's got to be removed. It may not exist in South Africa, we don't want it. And they've kept low profile, under the radar, and these plantations are being, basically they are running in KwaZulu-Natal. And that's a debate. It's a debate. Category 1A, surely you should be gone. And this is the permitting guys saying, surely it should be gone. Sandby has already moved in and moved out the known naturalized populations of it. And here we have, openly, we have companies who are promoting investment into this and come and join us. And they maintain it was imported legally, they should be allowed to have it in the country. I personally think at the moment they were allowed it legally in the country from 2008 to 2015. 2015 it became a Category 1A, it now must go. We spend a lot of money on biodiversity, we spend a lot of money on tourism, and really, if this is 1A, it should be gone. We have a lot of other areas, particularly in the Cape, where this Patterson's curse. It's spread a lot by horticultural methods. In the Cape Town area, it's particularly bad. And this is just to say we have social media success and we have no success on the media. So for those of you who are from conservancies, those of you who are doing communications as well, very difficult. We put a press release of this, we sent it to a whole bunch of newspapers, we said, please can you promote that this is a really bad plant? And of course, needless to say, none of the newspapers printed out press releases. They only do what Cyril's doing, they do Ukraine, they do KwaZulu-Natal floods, and really the media is now so small that in actual fact they have no time to put stories in about Patterson's curse. So we really, in your own areas, we are working a plan whereby we'll be able to give packages of pictures to conservancies to do their own public relations. In the last few years, we've moved very much from an era of 20 years of plants to the animal side of the operation. Invasive Rosary and Parakeets are a huge problem in the area Durban through to Joburg. They have been sighted in Cape Town, and this is where we have some ethics. At least 10 years ago, a decision was made that house crows, we didn't want Cape Town to be covered in 3 or 4 or 5 million house crows. Like Zanzibar, like Bombay, like Delhi, all these places that actually have all these big house crow populations. We wanted it to be a fynbos Cape Flower industry. So what's happened here is, this is a Category 2 species. We negotiate with the Rosary Parakeet associations, of which we have recently found there are 3 or 4 of them. The government has given those associations the right to permit these parakeets, and there are people who say these parakeets should be dealt with like house crows, which are 1A. And then there are people who are saying, no, these are beloved house crows. We want them, as we can see, there are a couple of Stalenville, East London, there are quite a few sightings in your particular area, but they're coming. And you are our Springbok team of invasive species. You're the people who must look out for these particular birds as they arrive and where they're coming. So we're looking at the messaging, and the breeding pairs of blue and apricot and orange ones are all selling for sort of 60,000, 70,000 rand. So we have to watch where they are. In terms of our social media, again, we put out social media about these rosary parakeets. We can get 66,000. I spent a lot of years as a magazine editor, and to get 30,000 copies of a magazine out in a specialist area for people to see is quite a lot. So when we put social media out and we get sort of 66,000 people seeing it, we know that this is a success. And we've got to have you using our material in your social media so you can spread the word as well. We are working on invasive mallards, and we're working on a strategy. We still have a huge problem. Disney needs, the Disney Corporation did us a huge disservice when they gave Donald Duck orange feet, because mallards have orange feet. And there's a history in this country of Sunday we go down to the pond and we feed completely and utterly unhealthy white bread to ducks, which is really stupid. And we've got to communicate to people that you don't feed ducks with white bread anyway, number 1. And 2, in actual fact, we don't want our entire operation, our entire environment run over with invasive alien mallard ducks. Thank you very much. But City of Cape Town, every municipality in the country, including yours, has by law to get rid of these mallard ducks. Now you go down to your local pond and try and kill a few ducks. Not easy. You have a lot of animal rights activists, you have a lot of residents, and so we're actually working on creative ideas where we can try and convince the population that these mallard ducks have taken over New Zealand, they've taken over all sorts of areas, they come from Northern Europe, and they're not good. We're also moving into marine areas. We are now working with marine scientists to work out where the marine invasions are. Marine invasives are largely moved by small yachts, not so much the big yachts, the big boats. The big boats have ballast water issues, but the small yachts and the small basins. The biggest amount of invasive alien marine species are to be found in our marinas, our yacht marinas. So we're developing campaigns to look at what the bad ones are, how they must be looked at. We're going to have a partnership with the pilot project with the aquaculture industry in the Saldanha Bay area. That particular aquaculture industry is very suspicious of invasive species people, largely because they've been doing mussel farming and they've been doing oyster farming, so they actually think we're going to shut them down, and they don't like that idea at all. But we think that we should actually talk to these people, and they will be the early warning detection community when invasive aliens arrive, particularly biofouling species arrive in these ports. Very new for all of us. If you think that you're now the king or the queen of invasive alien plants, this is a whole new species. As the Springbok team of invasive heroes, you've got to start learning to identify the white colonial sea squirt, boring sponges. Some of these things are really, really weird, wonderful. But we have 539 invasive species in this country, and a lot of time and effort has been spent on the plants. We now have to move into animals, we now have to move into marine species, and be able to completely confound our colleagues and friends and family by saying, oh my gosh, look at this boring sponge, it's an invasive species, and totally that you'll look very larny at the Sunday braai on the beach. We also have huge problems with aquatic weeds. The aquatic weeds have always been a big problem, and certainly heroes like Debbie Muir and a couple of others have been working with the Springbok team. The only rowing course in the entire country is a 2-kilometer stretch on Rhodoplant Dam, and we have a situation whereby because the Tshwane municipality have got 20% more sewage than they can deal with, we have a constant battle where unless we can spend 20 billion upgrading 40 sewage plants across the country, including Tshwane, we're going to have continual sewage into Rhodoplant Dam. And that means nutrients and that means plants. And so we have this huge problem that this is the actual Springbok rowing course. And every year we have to try and deal with it. We have to work with stakeholders around this dam. It's not easy. It's they're very angry. They don't think we're doing the right things. People have different ideas about what the water should look like. And this is where the conflict zones still are. And Debbie will certainly talk about this a bit later, how we manage it. In terms of the green industries, we are very grateful to the nursery industry. For many years they have actually abided by, to a large extent, the rules. This is the campaign that's going out this year to the gardening industry. What's hiding in your garden? What's hiding in your pond? We have also developed, we're now in a new era where we've got a whole bunch of video sort of mascots and avatar kind of technology that's come through. This is the Canadian campaign. We will actually lose the wolf, you'll be pleased to know, and we obviously are sort of testing out new avatars that are going to be launched into the nurseries in the August area. So we will say to everyone what's hiding in your garden. We use Z-folds. We will produce all the information in every town. These are the 10 worst invasives in Nelson Mandela Bay. These are the 10 worst in East London. And what's hiding in your park. All that can be identified digitally and not digitally with these particular avatars. We're trying our best. Everybody loves the girl. The girl is fabulous. No problem with the girl. They think the boy is shifty. They think the boy is not quite there. I'm not too sure it's his mouth. I'm not too sure what's shifty about him. But that's been rejected by the nursery industry, who say they want a different slight boy face. So we're working on a mouth, we're working on eyes, and we'll try and make the boy look less suspicious. But there we go. This is a work in progress. In terms of the nursery industry conflict cultivars, we're still having quite a bit of problem on the ageratum, huge big problem on the Morea exotica, where the government and the nursery industry still, quite frankly, say that paniculatum is not the plant that's been grown. Exotica is a much smaller one. We have ageratum. I think to a large extent we've solved the single, double. The industry has given up growing oleanders. And it's been an evolving thing where they're phasing out these particular plants. And then we've got, of course, the canna, which sources in the industry have worked with the Royal Horticultural Society, and they maintain that the canna hybrids have no connection to canna indica. And that particular argument is still working its way through. But what the government has done is they're producing money for master's students, money for PhD students. I'm working with a PhD student at the moment who's working on callistemon to actually identify all the callistemons, work out which are the good ones and the bad ones. This is the material that will go out to the industry, go out to, we've done the prototypes for Durban and Cape Town. We will be doing them for all the other towns, and they will be material that you can use in your communities. In terms of the cactus, this is the King Kong ground zero hero area of the cactus world, and we're very, very grateful and fortunate to have Professor Ian Patterson from Rhodes University with us here today, and we'll talk to you later today about the cutting edge issues that are happening in the cactus world and biocontrol for cactus for the Eastern Cape. But from our perspective, we're building on old material. We are promoting the new book on invasive cactus in South Africa, which the ARC are selling. You can buy it online. I think it's 250 Rand plus courier, and it arrives in your door 3 days later. And then, of course, we will be producing all the social media packages, digital posters, and obviously, as you can see, we're on the training workshops already for what we're doing. So we are trying to make a lot of these what are very peculiar and foreign to most people. We're trying to make them more identifiable. And it's terribly important. In this particular area, Eastern Cape, or more than anybody else in the whole wide world, has got invasive species coming out the ears. And of course, the prickly pear invasion, largely because the British Army decided that they needed red dye from the biocontrol for prickly pear. We had this huge invasion. Then they got the right biocontrol in, and we cleared the whole area, and now of course we have the torch cactus. And there's that same mountain in every case. So what happens is you're still getting generations of different species coming through. And at the moment there is no biocontrol for the torch cactus. So that's a huge problem that we've got. And then we have situations whereby I realize that here is quite dry, but I must tell you, in Johannesburg we've been living under a cloud for 5 months, and we've had so much rain we don't know what to do with ourselves. Having 40 millimeters of rain every 3 days is a new one for us. We normally get about 750 millimeters a year of rain in Johannesburg. I think we've had nearly 2,000 this year. So it's a most bizarre year. And of course, the climate change effects of KwaZulu-Natal, where they have, in 1 week, they have 5 months of rain, which has done all that huge damage in KwaZulu-Natal. But the rains have also been in the Karoo, and as a result, for the first time in its life, the torch cactus is saying, my God, there's rain, there's flowers. And so what happens? People coming back in December from Cape Town, but going home to Johannesburg, they see these incredible flowers, they pick them up on the side of the road, they take them back to their homes, and they say, isn't it fabulous? I've got to have one of those flowers in my garden. And again, spreading a real disaster, a cactus which we don't need in our lives. Huge problem for farmers. Another example of the Eastern Cape, we worked with Rhodes University on this particular promotion. The idea was to offer biocontrol to emerging farmers to get rid of the bad cactuses on their lands and clear their lands. We sent out media releases, we sent out pictures, we worked with Rhodes, and Patterson spent hours and hours and hours providing us with amazing stuff. We went out to all these radio stations, and not one single radio station covered us. None of us gave us any publicity whatsoever, and it was just dead quiet. Community radio stations are really struggling horrendously. They're putting on music that just plays, and we can't get any publicity. So for this kind of thing, which again, I implore upon you, if you've got a department, a conservancy, or group, we can provide the material, and we've got to do the social media ourselves. It cannot be done. This was an abject failure of a project which a lot of hours went into. So we're producing these for the EMIs, the green scorpions, the Environmental Management Inspectorate, which you'll hear about later. So these are certainly going out to the, these will certainly be available. And again, not everybody knows, that a bongo is, for example, category 1A. So we're getting a lot of the reptile experts are giving us incredible pictures. On our own team, Warren Schmidt is an outstanding photographer of reptiles. So we're getting that kind of material, and we're showing people how to distinguish between common boas and all the other boas. And of course, up in the Eastern Cape particularly, we're getting a lot of buck species. The green scorpions tell us that, you arrive on a ranch in the Eastern Cape and they just say, well, they're not our buck, they just wander around the area. And then, of course, the res nullius locks in, and then there's all sorts of conflict in the area. This particular, what's called everywhere in the world is the Asian toad. We're a bit politically correct in South Africa. If we're going to run a smear campaign, we rather don't call them the Indian house crow and the Indian Asian toad. We actually try and move it away from insulting population groups. We have the common house crow, and we now have the black spine toad. And we're still working on communication. Only 1 or 2 have been found in the country, but we work with the scientists, and we hope that will all work out. In terms of the media packages, we need people to know what this jolly toad looks like. Huge problem, particularly in the Western Cape, where we have the very, very precious leopard toad, and then of course we have the indigenous guttural toad, which is an invader in the Cape Town area, but in actual fact is indigenous to most of the rest of the country. And we have to identify what all these toads look like, and this is going to take a huge education operation to work with it. Here are the invasive house crows, very successful project. The project started many years ago in the city of Cape Town. We did have 10,000 crows. I think we're now down to about 250. But these crows are clever. They used to feed them with meat, and then it was too expensive, and they tried pasta. Now the crows know what the pasta is, so we have to change the staff. So the staff who pick up the dead crows are not allowed to be the staff that put down the food. There's a lot of technology that moves in for this, and of course, these crows made a huge mistake when they came to South Africa. They set up in Langa and Gugulethu. If they had set up in Constantia, the animal rights activists would have had us under a barrel, but they didn't. They set up somewhere else. And as a result, we have school headmasters in the Gugulethu and Langa area just saying, get rid of these things. They swarm down and they attack our school children. Anyone with a lunch tin gets attacked. Absolute nightmare. And so we've been very successful on the removal of the house crows. And then, of course, the real drama of the last 3 years, of course, is the invasive shot-hole borer. The shot-hole borer will be hopefully a Category 1B this year. It's going through all the legal processes and the systems, but at the moment there's emergency legislation out. There will be a campaign this winter to say stop moving firewood. Colleagues, Morne Volhammer has been on RSK last week talking about don't move firewood, and do appreciate what's going on. We have a huge problem that if the infected firewood gets into our nature reserves, we're in big trouble. These are pictures from George, which just show you the whole George thing has really collapsed in a heap. And when we went to Stellenbosch in January, first of all, we have to tell Stellenbosch that 80% of their town is exotics, and then 2, that the word in Johannesburg, out in the Johannesburg urban forest, is that we will have no English oaks in 10 years' time. And you tell that comment to the Stellenbosch people, who are very precious about their village, and they you can see them visibly go into demise. The idea that they won't have their English oaks is just an absolute nightmare. These are the researchers that are working very hard behind the invasive species shot-hole borer. We work with them. Willem de Pear from Pretoria. We've got Francis Ruitz from Stellenbosch, and our own Professor Martin Hill, who is the king of the Centre for Invasion Biology up at Rhodes University, and they do extremely good work up there, him and Julie Kutsia. In terms of the levels of shot-hole borer, the communications is not going to be hysterical. We've had a lot of very hysterical communications for shot-hole borer in the past. Screaming, shouting, nervous, going to lose all our forests. Now we're following the Californian operation, which is very much check your level of infestation. Are there 50 holes in your tree? Are there 150 holes in your tree? Is it a heavy infestation of over 150? Are there branches missing? And we are trying to train landscapers and nurserymen and the green industries to look at this as a sort of a management. It's not going anywhere. We have no cure for this particular species, and there are no, certainly in the horticultural industry, there are no registered products. The products that are registered for wattle in the forestry industry by the Department of Agriculture, and even those don't get the support of much of the scientists. It's basically salicylic acid that you're throwing at a tree. So be very careful of how you operate with this. This is what they do in California. They have a block, low-value trees, high-value trees, what you're going to do with the trees, infestation levels, management options, what you can do, how you can operate with it. And this is what we're going to turn into South African terminology, and we will be promoting people to say how you get rid of dead wood. I know in June we will be running a one-day course for tree fellers and arborists in the Cape Town area. Probably in July we're looking at the Johannesburg area, and we will basically be going through and teaching people how they deal with dead wood that's infested. Because otherwise, the green industry will be the biggest carrier of this particular species. And we have to look at what they do overseas. This is what they do overseas. Don't move firewood. These are the North American campaigns, and they're very linked to insects. You'll see that they're linked to the Asian longhorn beetle, they link to the emerald ash borer, and they say don't move any dead material in, the California area. And we are going to use this don't move wood, and we're going to similarly roll out a campaign for the winter. Very difficult. some of the poorest people in South Africa rely on selling firewood in the winter period to survive. This is a very delicate balance. This is not black and white, this is grey, but you know, we have the environmental biodiversity concerns, and then we have the human social concerns, and we've got to balance it out, and we've got to make it happen. These are the latest, and I'm coming to the end now. These are my last few slides. This is the Z-folds that we've created for the EMIs, the green scorpions, so they will be able to have material that's downloadable and that they can take around. And the material will largely say how to manage infested shottle borer on your property, how to report infested trees on state land. And certainly the monitoring of shottle borer is certainly upped considerably. There are very good traps, they know what chemicals to put in the traps, and there's a great deal that goes on at that level. So from my perspective, these are the Chinese maples. These are the liquid ambers from Stellenbosch, which we informed them might not be there in 5 or 10 years' time, to their absolute horror. But nevertheless, that in actual fact is the case. Right, so that's the introduction, and yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.